8. Does that remind you of anything? What about this? 8 seconds. It's a WCA competition and you've just gone through 8 seconds of inspection before an official solve. If you're like most of the cubers in the world, your instinct right now is probably to put down your cube and start solving. But this action is potentially one of the worst mistakes you can make in a competition. To understand why, we must examine your entire inspection time. WCA regulation gives 15 seconds of inspection before any solution on any event. In this inspection, the competitor can look at their puzzle and start the timer before those 15 seconds end. However, there are a few caveats. As insignificant as it may sound, you have to spend time picking up your cube to rotate it and inspect it, and you also must spend time to put down your cube, as WCA regulations don't allow you to start the timer holding the puzzle. Additionally, the most important thing to consider is that the stack mat timer requires 1 second to start. Altogether, providing a tiny bit of buffer, we can say all of this takes 2 seconds. Thus, now we only have 13 seconds of real inspection left. Now let's think about how much of those 13 seconds you use when you stop inspection at 8 seconds. When the judge calls 8, you've just used around 7.5 seconds of real inspection, as you spent those first 0.5 seconds reacting to the cube cover getting lifted and picking up the cube. 7.5 seconds out of 13 is hardly 58% of your inspection time. It may seem less important on a 15-second scale, but this is essentially equivalent to giving someone an hour to write a report, but you rush it because you thought you only had 35 minutes. Again, this is an extremely inefficient use of your time. Now, before I explain to you what you should be doing in these 13 seconds to be as productive as you can, an important thing to understand is when to stop inspecting and start the timer. Though you want to maximize your inspection time, you also don't want to go over your limit, resulting in a penalty. The judge is obliged to call out at both 8 seconds and 12 seconds. When the judge calls 12, you are, using previous logic, 11.5 seconds into your reasonable inspection time. Thus, you have about 1.5 more seconds before you get to the 13-second mark. If you are just getting into competitive cubing, I recommend putting down your cube at the 12-second call so you give yourself plenty of time to start the timer should you need it. At that point, you're using nearly 90% of inspection, already a 30% jump from before. However, if you have been to many competitions, I expect that you have a decent feel for about 1 second of inspection, and you should use that to your advantage to get nearly all 100% of valid inspection time. Again, this still leaves about 0.5 seconds to put down a cube, which is more than enough. After you have understood how much more inspection you can get by not starting at 8 seconds and when you should start instead, it is important to understand how to divide up your inspection time for maximum productivity. I'm going to go over some specific examples of what you can do for the CFOP method on 3x3, but the core concepts can apply to most cubes. Importantly, there's generally no set standard of, say, 2 seconds for inspecting cross, 4 for F2L or whatnot, but there are a few important guidelines that I generally follow when it comes to inspection. The first and most significant one is not to get stuck on one way to solve whatever you're inspecting. For example, if you find a decent cross, don't settle on it until you have checked at least a few other potential solutions to that cross, and even crosses on other colors. Similarly, after the cross, try to get different solutions for your first pair and try tracking different pairs to see how they turn out. By getting yourself stuck on one possible solution, it's just going to make it harder for you in the future. Building on that previous tip, after you have mastered tracking F2L pairs, it's important that you can influence pairs by modifying your cross solution a little bit as well. Thus, even when you think you found a decent cross solution, don't be afraid to go back from F2L to cross to change up that a little bit more too. I recommend exploring solutions up to around the 8-second call and then settling on a good one for the rest of the time. After you know exactly how you're going to turn, that's not it. You also need to make sure that you have good finger tricks for that execution. This may involve visualizing that same solution in various orientations to see which one is the smoothest and fastest. That way, when you get into your solve, you can subconsciously execute all those moves while you're actually more actively looking for pieces for future steps. As a judge, I've seen plenty of things that people do, which I will quickly include here so you know to start avoiding them. First, putting down your cube, priming a timer, and then inspecting. Many people do this, and not only does it limit how many sides you can see on your cube, it is also an unnecessary precaution if you follow the timing that I have provided. Additionally, many people look at just one side of the cube, trying to analyze it as much as they can, which, trust me when I say, quite literally limits your future horizons. Now, when it comes to these rules, there are a few certain times when you can break them, as much as I wouldn't recommend it. For example, if you find a long solution for something extremely good, like a double x cross or a x cross plus 1 that you are afraid of forgetting, it's probably a good idea to start instead of exploring other options for this once. No matter what, however, your excuse should never be that you can't find anything good. In that case, you should really keep looking. I'm not saying I know everything about inspection, and I'm surely not saying that I don't make mistakes once in a while. But what I am saying is that in any scenario, losing half of your inspection just isn't worth it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.